Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to this information session for the Department of English here at the Chinese University. I am not Joanna Mansbridge, of course. I will hand over to her in a second. I'm David Hudder. I'm the chair of the English department here. I'm just going to say a few words, a little bit about what it is that we do. I know when you leave school and go to university in Hong Kong, there can be a bit of a gap, and it's kind of hard to work out what's going to happen in different programs at university. Of course, everyone keeps studying English through school, and so you've got a lot of experience, but I'm sure you're wondering exactly what is it like? What's the difference? It's not like use of English, that's for sure. What I want to stress is that what we do in our program is we stress a kind of balance. We have a balance between certainly improving your English, continuing to perfect your English. We have a lot of communications courses where you really are working on how to read and write and speak as best you can. But we're also interested in balancing that with thinking critically, which of course all employers value, but also thinking creatively. And there's lots of ways you can be creative in English. I would stress that Hong Kong people are always using English creatively in their everyday lives, not just, writing poems or something like that, something very obvious, but in blending English and Cantonese. There's a lot of creativity. And so Hong Kong has that kind of balance already. Now, we also have a kind of balance between some of the biggest and the smallest kinds of things, between English as a truly global language, and as I say, English as a very local language. There are some very unique features of how English is used in Hong Kong. We want to pay attention to those, both in linguistic study and literary study. People write creatively poems and fiction about Hong Kong, or, they are Hong Kongers themselves, but also people use English in all kinds of scenarios in Hong Kong that we can study from a linguistics kind of perspective. So we have a kind of balance then between some of the biggest and some of the smallest things, from language policy and the history of language around the world to an individual word, an individual sound, an individual poem. So in all these different ways, we're seeking to balance what we do. And that is reflected, I think, also in the balance between literature and linguistics that we have in our program. You have a lot of choice. You can find your own pathway through the program, but in any case, you're given this kind of grounding in both of these areas of study, as well as in improving your English, which of course is always something that we want for our students as well. So you have a lot of different things that you can do. I won't go through them now. Professor Mansbridge will give you a kind of more detailed introduction to the program. But anyway, thanks very much for coming. And if you want to talk to us a little bit more, a little bit later, particularly maybe you want to talk to our own English majors, there's a lot of opportunity for that. So thanks very much, and I'll now hand over to Joanna. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Professor Huddard. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to our admissions talk. It's a pleasure to have you here, and welcome to CUHK. So as Professor Huddard said, my name is Professor Joanna Mansbridge, and I'm the convener of the Undergraduate Admissions Committee here in our department. So my job here today is just to tell you a little bit about our department, what makes it distinctive. And so I'll talk for about 15 minutes or so, and then we have two students, current students, to share their experience in our program, and in particular on an exchange in our program. Okay, so I'll just begin with maybe the obvious question that's on everybody's mind. So why English, and why English at CUHK? So I know that you're at a point in your life where you have choices and you're thinking about a lot of different possibilities, a lot of different pathways ahead of you. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about what makes our department distinctive. And I have to begin with this. We just received the QS rankings for departments, English language and literature departments in the world, and our department ranked 51st. So we're very proud of that. We do have We have a faculty that's very committed both in their teaching and research, and we have students who are equally committed to their learning, and it's a very congenial environment, I think, in our department. So students feel comfortable approaching professors, and there's a very good rapport in our department, I think. So as Professor Huddard mentioned, we have a very balanced program, and I think that's one of the uniquenesses of our English program in Hong Kong. So we have 4 main areas. Communications, students take a couple of required communications courses, and you learn everything from how to write a CV and perform in a job interview, writing emails, and then of course communicating in academic English, which is nobody's first language. And so you hone the skills of writing and speaking in English for the purposes of your courses and beyond that. And then we have applied English linguistics, English literary studies, and creative writing. And creative writing we're really developing this part of our program. And students can declare this as a stream on their transcripts if they wish to. So we have really a great creative writing faculty. So students have a lot of flexibility in terms of the balance of courses that they take in each of these 4 areas, and in particular, linguistics, literary studies, and creative writing. So students can carve their own pathways and decide. And whatever the pathway, they're always getting a kind of very expansive understanding of English as an evolving world language. So we very much stress that. And as Professor Huddard said, I think one of the main differences between studying English in high school and at university is we don't focus on proficiency and vocabulary, even though you do develop both of those things when you're studying with us. And that just emerges organically from the different texts that you study, studying English as it's used in everyday contexts, conversations on the MTR, online, poems, drama, novels. So when you're reading, you inherently build your vocabulary, but you're also learning about cultural nuances in language, historical changes in English, and then the cultural context that English is coming from. So we do have complementary approaches to the study of English, and our streams complement each other, and you'll gain in-depth knowledge of the English language, along with histories and cultures within which it's embedded. And learning about English from these different perspectives builds confidence, and it really enables you to find your own voice and feel at home in the language. And so that's something that emerges in the types of assessments that we assign. Again, it's not so much about memorizing vocabulary lists and more about creating your own ideas and building your own ideas and communicating them effectively. So one of the other things that I think makes our department distinctive is there's a very strong sense of identity and belonging from the beginning. So you're designated as an English major from the first day, which means that you take English courses, but you also participate in English society activities. And we have a very lively English society in our department, and quite a few extracurricular activities that students can get involved in that extend their learning and, of course, provide a kind of strong learning community. So this leads to greater depth of knowledge and a stronger sense of identity and belonging. So some of the things that when you study English, you will learn to be creative, independent, and articulate thinker and communicator. And this is, of course, something that is very transferable to many different types of professions. Communication is a very powerful tool in our world. And if you can be an effective and confident communicator, that is applicable to many different kinds of professions. And you develop cultural literacy. So English is a global language, a world language, but it differs greatly depending on the context in which it's spoken. And as Professor Huddard mentioned, Hong Kong English is an incredibly creative English, and it's very, it's adapting to the environment and the particular context that we're living in. And so we think in terms of Englishes rather than a single English. And so students really understand those kinds of different cultural nuances. And you gain an understanding of an open-mindedness to diverse perspectives. And again, this comes out of learning about different cultures where English is used, and reading literary texts that are maybe a perspective that is different from your own. And so all of these really are about acquiring skills that make you really adaptable within global professional environments. And of course, global professional environments, even here in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is, of course, has a lot of global companies, and they really value students who are adaptable and who have these, I guess, what would be called soft skills. So that is reflected towards the end, I'll talk a little bit about the professions that our students go into, but there's quite a lot of variety, and it varies actually quite a lot from year to year. So just to tell you a little bit about our course assessments, the kinds of assignments that we assign our students. So we do, like I said, we encourage independent thinking. So we don't sort of see the students as a passive receptacle for our knowledge about English. We really want them to engage and formulate their own ideas. And then they communicate those ideas in various different types of assessments that combine creative and critical skills. So just to give you a sense, of course, we have essays. It's an English department, so we do have assessments as part of our course assessments. And multimedia presentations, so often group presentations, but this allows students to communicate their research and their ideas through multiple different pathways. Reflective narratives, so a lot of our courses ask students to reflect in maybe a more low stakes way, not in an essay form, but in a more low stakes way on the readings they're doing. And again, it's about sort of formulating ideas and then developing them. Creative writing, so different forms of creative writing, not even just in creative writing courses, but again, those can be embedded in other types of courses. Dramatic performances, I'll talk a little bit more about an extracurricular drama activity we have, but we also have drama courses where students create and perform their own plays. And then we have final year capstone projects, and those are really important for students. This is really where you demonstrate your independent thinking, your independent research skills, and students choose a topic that's of interest to them. And it can be a creative writing project or a more standard research type paper. And you choose a topic, and then you're assigned a faculty advisor, and you work with that advisor, and you hone your topic and write a paper over the course of a semester. So that's a credit-bearing course. It's especially important for students who are thinking to go on to graduate school. So those become really important writing samples that you would send to the school to demonstrate your capacity for independent research and thinking. So they're very valuable as a transition from undergraduate to graduate. And they're also just an invaluable experience as a kind of culmination of your studies here. Okay, so now I'll give you a little glimpse of some of our courses. So like I said, creative writing is a relatively new stream in our program, and students can declare that and have it on their transcripts. So we do have different types of creative writing course, just a basic creative writing course, but then more specialized creative writing courses. Another popular course we have in our department is 19th century novels on screen. And so this course reads novels written in the 19th century and then looks at their adaptation in different historical periods, 20th century, 21st century. And so it just asks questions about how those texts are adapted. It raises questions relating to gender, nationhood. So it asks students to think critically about what these texts say about the particular historical period they're published in, but then how they become relevant to modern audiences. And we have a drama and performance course, and these are the courses I teach. My research is in drama. And so students, as I said, they devise, they create and perform their own play, and they also write an essay reflecting on their creative and critical process. So that can often be a very exciting experience for students. There's a lot that goes into putting on a play. Forensic linguistics. So this is one of our linguistics courses, and it looks at actual legal cases that involve forensic linguists to sort of look at the linguistic evidence in legal cases. So students really have a hands-on experience with a certain type of English, legal English. So it's a really specialized but also fascinating course. And then what might be considered the literary equivalent, we have a course in crime fiction. So students, again, look at sort of elements of crime fiction as a genre. So the narrative structure, the different kind of tropes and characters that you see in crime fiction. And this is a very historical course. So you look at early crime fiction, late 19th century, 20th century, all the way into television crime fiction. And in this course, students do have a opportunity to write their own crime fiction. And so you, again, you sort of apply the skills that you're learning in a creative way. Language and the internet. So of course, the internet has really changed how we communicate, and even online, English remains a kind of global language. But the internet has really changed English. You know, we all know just by texting, you know, that new words are created, new ways of communicating have emerged. So students look at those transformations and they look at the extent to which the internet does transform language. And even questioning things like, will English continue to be the global language, even in a kind of expansive space like the internet? So we do have a course in Hong Kong English, and this is a very popular course. And again, it allows you to study English as a plural, so English is, but then English that is very close to home. So here you do see English as an evolving entity, something that is changing and not a static system that you just have to memorize and then repeat. We're all using English on a daily basis. It's how, of course, we relate to others. But when you're studying it within your own home context, it really becomes clear how organic an entity language can be. So that's, like I said, quite a popular course. And then language and intercultural communication is really an important course, especially if you're thinking to work in a kind of global business environment. You know, you're going to be communicating with people all around the world who have a different way of using English. You know, there are different sort of cultural values and different codes that you have to become aware of when you're communicating across cultural boundaries. Even though you're using English, it will vary depending on where the person is speaking it. So that can be a very helpful course. And finally, I just want to mention our summer study program. So this is a very popular program with our students. It's can be a very life-changing experience for students. So they spend, I think it's 6 weeks? 2 weeks, 2 weeks at Oxford University studying. And along with studying, students get an opportunity to tour the various sites in England and again, apply their English skills in an actual sort of Anglophone environment. A lot of our students take that opportunity to extend their stay and travel around Europe, and again, sort of just put their English into practice in those settings. It's quite a competitive program, so it's selective, so students have to apply. There's a limited amount of spots, but our two students will share a little bit more about that because they've just come from an exchange. And I'll just mention an extracurricular activity that's become quite very much part of our department culture. It's the Andrew Parkin Drama Cup, and every year we have a drama competition. And students work in groups and they write a script and they stage a play. And we have usually late May, we'll have a day set aside for the performances, and there's a panel of judges and there's prizes, but it's all in a very good fun, and it's a very bonding experience for our students. So again, it's an example of a very kind of congenial rapport amongst students and between the students and our faculty, I think. So this is again, a very unique part of our program. Okay, so the last thing I just want to talk a little bit about, and some of you might have questions later, job prospects. So this is probably something that many people think about, of course, when you're choosing any major. English is not a degree that trains you for a profession, so it's not a kind of one ramp degree. So if you're studying engineering, you go into engineering. But English opens many different pathways. So, again, it's a very adaptable degree, and it's very coveted by a lot of different types of employers in Hong Kong. So it does, it opens up a lot of opportunities. So just these are the statistics from last year's graduates, so 2022. You can see quite a large number went on to further studies. So many went on to graduate school. And as I said at the beginning, this varies quite a lot from year to year. So the statistics and breakdown really varies quite a lot. But I think the further studies, it attests to the academic rigor, I think, of our department in some ways, and the academic ambitions of our students. Some go into government, small proportion last year, commerce and industry, 11%. Also a large proportion going into education as teachers in various different kinds of institutions. Social and public organizations. And again, quite a large category of others. And this is a lot of students go into the creative industries, art and design. So the others seems nebulous, but it again attests to the very the adaptable nature of an English degree. Okay, so that was all of the information that I wanted to share with you all, but I did want to leave a little bit of time for questions at this point. So does anyone have questions about anything I've just said? Or yeah. Well, other than the length of period of study, I guess that's the main difference if you're coming in as a senior year. So you have a shorter amount of time here I guess that becomes especially relevant if you're thinking of things like exchanges. So you have a limited amount of time. So we have the Oxford summer tour, but there are many different exchanges that the university offers on the university level, the college level. So that would be something that you would have to take into consideration. But in terms of differences, yeah, I mean, it's length of study and, fitting in all of the required courses within that shorter amount of time. You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes. That's a great question. Actually, I will, this is a good time to point out that we have some publications here at the front, and please do take one while you're leaving. And one of them is student writing, CU writing in English. So yes, the answer is yes. And please do take these. So two are from one of our professors, Professor Eddie Tay, who teaches creative writing and is a creative writer. And so two of his publications are there, and then student writing.